In 1986, James Cameron did something that had never been done before, and has never been done since. He created a sequel to one of the greatest films ever made, and managed to also create one of the greatest films ever made, whilst changing the genre. Aliens was released 7 years after Alien, and was created by an entirely different creative team, different director, different writers, different producer, and an entirely different cast with one exception. Cameron's original cut of the film, which has since been released as the special edition, was substantially longer than Fox considered acceptable. The studio ordered Cameron to make the film shorter, and so he reluctantly trimmed out about 15 minutes of footage, virtually all of which is taken from the first half of the film. Unlike with Alien, the special edition of Aliens is indeed the director's original vision, free from any creative limitations. Fox wanted the film to be 2 hours long at maximum, as this allows for the film to be screened more times in a day, which means Fox will earn more money. And so Cameron was asked to cut a further 12 minutes of footage. He refused, believing that if he did so, then the film wouldn't make sense, and so Aliens was ultimately released theatrically with a length of 2 hours and 17 minutes. An extended version of the film, which included some deleted scenes, was first broadcast in 1989, and what would later become known as the Special Edition was first released in 1991, with a runtime of 2 hours and 34 minutes. Now, before we get to the changes, I am going to be ranking each adjusted scene on a tier list, as I did with The Lord of the Rings and Alien. Scenes that I rank in B tier or higher are scenes that I feel improve the movie, with anything in D tier or lower being scenes that make the movie worse. But enough preamble, let's get stuck into James Cameron's special edition of Aliens. After Ripley is rescued, we are introduced to Burke, who explains to Ripley that she was drifting in hypersleep for 57 years. Ripley's nightmares regarding the alien are established, and the theatrical cut then cuts to the Inquest, where she has to defend her actions in the prior film. The special edition, however, adds in a brand new scene before we get to the Inquest. Ripley is sitting in what appears to be a park, but this is revealed to be a digital backdrop for what is presumably some kind of therapy room or similar. Burke arrives, and Ripley immediately asks if he has any word about her daughter. He tries to deflect to focus Ripley on the upcoming hearing. Burke begins to rattle off a load of legal speak, saying that they don't have much time, but he has read Ripley's deposition and thinks she will do fine. But he says there will be a lot of heavyweights at the inquest, and he starts listing them off, before Ripley interrupts him.
Do you have any news about my daughter?
Burke then asks if they can sit down, and he reveals that Amanda Ripley McLaren, her married name, died when she was 66, which was 2 years ago. Ripley is heartbroken and says that she promised that she would be home for Amanda's birthday.
Her 11th birthday.
We then tie back in with the theatrical cut. Let's start with something relatively minor before we go for the jugular, by looking at what this scene does for Burke. He is shown to be slimy, but initially seems like an okay guy. He is very friendly and personable, despite occasionally feeling artificial and fake. He is certainly manipulative, but seems to take pity on Ripley. He wanted to wait until after the inquest before revealing that Ripley's daughter was dead, which is so fucking in character for Burke that I love it. This isn't just, "Nyah, I am evil, corporate bullshit always comes first." On a purely pragmatic level, what Burke tries to do here makes sense, and would likely have resulted in a better outcome for Ripley, as she would not have been quite as emotional during the inquest. With knowledge of what happens later, it appears that Burke is being so nice because he wants to have a degree of control over Ripley, and potentially to have a friend who owes him something. This is presumably how Burke acts around basically everyone. Everything is a power struggle, and all of his relationships are about control. They are about how can I use this person to further my own career. However, the audience doesn't yet know that Burke is an evil fuckstick. Here he is shown to be charming, complimentary, and easy to get along with, but he always has this undercurrent of corporate skinwalker pretending to be human. He will have been prepping for the inquest and then discovered, oh shit, Ripley's daughter is dead, what do I do now? The psychopath cogs began turning, and he decided, well, I'll just save that little detail until after the inquest. Ripley tries to listen to what Burke has to say, as the hearing is obviously important, just nowhere near as important to her as finding out about her daughter. A worse version of the scene would simply have Ripley be like, "No, stop talking, where is my daughter?" But the scene as it is manages to convey essentially that, whilst keeping both characters grounded and relatable, and without manufacturing irrelevant drama at this point in the film. The focus of this scene is on the tragedy of what has happened to Ripley, and initiating some kind of confrontation with Burke would not be appropriate given what happens later, and it also would have distracted from this focus. Now, regarding what this scene means for Ripley, the biggest difference between the special edition and the theatrical cut is that in the special edition, Ripley actually had a daughter of her own. Given this fact, her chasing this up at the earliest opportunity is entirely appropriate because Ripley has just been told that she has been drifting in space for 57 years, so contacting her daughter would absolutely be at the top of her priority list. Ripley being a mother was not ever considered when creating Alien, nor does it play a part in that film's plot. However, there is nothing in Alien that suggests that Ripley would not have a daughter, and this doesn't feel at all out of place for the character. Whether or not Ripley has a daughter is totally irrelevant to the plot of Alien, although if both films had been made back to back, then it may have made sense to reference Ripley's daughter in passing in the first movie. This would, however, not have been necessary, and Aliens manages to introduce this brand new element to her character without it feeling like it came out of nowhere. The time difference means Amanda was 9 years old at the end of Alien, and given the fact that Ripley promised she would be home by Amanda's 11th birthday, this suggests that Ripley last saw her daughter when she was about 7 years old at most. And now she is looking at a photo of a 66-year-old woman, a woman old enough to be her mother. In fact, the woman in this photo is actually Sigourney Weaver's mother, as discounting the 57 years in hypersleep, Ripley is 30 years old, and this woman is somehow the 7-year-old girl she left about 4 years ago. Amanda's life is left a complete mystery. All we know for a fact is that she got married at least once, did not have any children, and died younger than what would be considered normal. We can infer that Amanda's mother disappearing after going off on a job in space never to return would have had a profound impact on her. Whether or not Ripley had a husband or a partner is never mentioned. If Ripley was married, then we would expect that she would have asked Burke to check if her husband is still alive, as if he is of a similar age to her, then he would now be about 83, and so him being alive is absolutely not beyond the realm of possibility, and so my guess here is that Amanda's father was not actively involved in Ripley's life. Amanda Ripley does feature as the playable character in Alien Isolation, and whilst this obviously would not have been considered when writing Aliens, the plot of Alien Isolation does fit quite neatly in between both films. About 15 years after the events of Alien, when Amanda was 24, the Nostromo's flight recorder is recovered and Amanda travels to the Sevastopol station to get closure, and to discover why her mum never came home. Everything goes horribly wrong, and Amanda survives the experience, although will obviously have been deeply traumatized. This all fits with what I described above, although the specifics of Amanda's life are not relevant to the plot of Aliens, and so they are not elaborated on in the film. Ripley having and losing a daughter excellently contextualizes everything that happens between Ripley and Newt later in the film. And whilst the theatrical cut is totally functional, being like, well, Ripley is of about motherhood age and Newt has lost her parents, so let's fulfill our natural biological instincts and become a family for all of about 5 minutes until Alien 3 throws a wrench in that plan. However, by establishing that Ripley was a mother herself, and that she had that taken away from her, the special edition does a much better job of contextualizing why Ripley's protective instincts for Newt are so intense. She cannot let that happen again. This is very similar to what happens with Joel in the first Last of Us game/season. He has a daughter who dies tragically at the start of the story, and this then contextualizes his relationship with Ellie. and is a critical part of explaining his actions at the end of the story. That was the end of the story, by the way, nothing happened afterwards. If Joel didn't have a daughter of his own, then him gradually developing a father-daughter relationship with Ellie would still be functional, but it would almost certainly not be anywhere near as emotionally effective. Much like Ripley, Joel cannot lose another daughter, and both stories place the daughters in direct threat, forcing Ripley and Joel to risk their lives to save their family. This is substantially more effective with the added context that Ripley had a daughter, she let her daughter down, she didn't come home, and she was never able to say goodbye. This also gives us an additional reason to empathize with her right from the start, as not only is she about to be essentially blamed for the loss of the Nostromo, but she also realizes that she no longer has a life to go back to. The alien has, in a very real sense, taken everything from her. So how can we possibly justify removing something as pivotal as this? The theatrical cut keeps us moving much quicker. We recover the character from the prior film, and then immediately deal with the consequences of that film before moving into the plot of this film, which is very efficient. However, given the narrative and thematic focus that is given to Ripley's relationship with Newt, the value of this deleted scene cannot be understated.
Here's a scene that was cut from the release version of the film, which became the source of a little bit of controversy with Sigourney, because she later said in print that she had based her entire character throughout the film on this scene, and she was devastated when it was removed.
On first viewing, until we start developing the mother-daughter relationship later in the film, I can understand the audience being like, oh, well, that was sad and I feel bad for Ripley, but what was the point? The scene's purpose is not fully understood until much later in the film, which is by no means a negative, just an observation as to why it may have been deemed removable. The only thing I would personally change about this is I would allow it to breathe a bit more right at the end. As Ripley breaks down crying, maybe have Burke comfort her before cutting to the inquest. Because as is, we are slapped in the balls with the tragedy of Ripley promising a 7-year-old that she will be back in time for her 11th birthday, only to realize that Amanda has died age 66. And then about 4 seconds after this reveal, we cut to a jump scare of Parker's face during the inquest, which I think happens ever so slightly too quickly.
This scene was one of the seminal scenes in the movie, and was one of the ones that had to be deleted and omitted from the theatrical version because of length. We didn't have multiplexes back then, and there were only so many showings a day that you could have of a film, and we had to get it no more than 2 hours and 10 minutes in order to get the maximum number of screenings per day.
It really is quite difficult for me to criticize James Cameron for deciding to remove this scene, because even the theatrical cut is not exactly short, at 2 hours and 17 minutes, and if Fox insisted, Mr. Cameron, you need to remove 15 minutes from your film, I don't care how, just do it, then rather than criticizing Cameron, I must instead declare my sympathy for him. The special edition, at 2 hours and 34 minutes, is still a really fucking tight movie. And although removing this scene does absolutely affect how the audience relates to Ripley, because it adds further emotional weight to her relationship with Newt, this relationship is already excellent in the theatrical cut. Regardless, due to the impact this scene has on the central character and core narrative theme of the film, I cannot place The Park any lower than S tier. This is one of the best deleted scenes I have ever seen, and it is one of the most emotionally powerful scenes in the film. In the theatrical cut, Ripley explains what happened, and the inquest concludes with her becoming pissed off and shouting,
God damn it, that's not all. Because if one of those things gets down here, then that will be all. Then all this bullshit that you think is so important, you can just kiss all of that goodbye.
As everyone leaves, Ripley then asks why not send someone to check out LV-426, and she is informed that there are colonists who have been living there for over 20 years who have not complained about any such hostile organisms. The special edition extends the conclusion of the inquest, in which the chairman makes a decision and tells Ripley what is going to happen to her.
It is the finding of this court of inquiry that Warrant Officer E. Ripley has acted with questionable judgment and is unfit to hold an ICC license as a commercial flight officer. Said license is hereby suspended indefinitely. Now, no criminal charges will be filed against you at this time, and you are released on your own recognizance for a 6-month period of psychometric probation to include monthly review by an ICC psychiatric technician.
This is primarily exposition, so let's consider whether or not this exposition is necessary. Firstly, Ripley loses her license. We find this out anyway in the very next scene, in which Burke offers to reinstate her license if she agrees to accompany him to LV-426, and so it is simply not necessary to repeat this. Secondly, Ripley's actions are not being treated as criminal. This never comes up again, but it is also not particularly relevant to the plot, as even if Ripley were directly blamed for the deaths of her crew, Burke would still be interested in taking her back to LV-426, and so the plot would almost certainly not change. And thirdly, Ripley is being ordered to undergo psychiatric probation. This is her punishment. She is being treated as a crazy person who blew up a very expensive ship when she did not need to, and she needs to be assessed extensively by a psychiatrist in order to have any hope of having a normal life. This dialogue also serves as a means of making us further empathize with Ripley, because we know she is telling the truth, and so to be told at length that she is crazy, is being stripped of her license, and needs to see a psychiatrist is deeply unjust. However, much like her losing her license, her being ordered to have monthly psychiatric evaluations is revealed anyway in the very next scene. Overall, this dialogue is not an important part of the film. Most of it is revealed minutes later anyway, and it extends the scene by nearly 45 seconds. However, this extension does actually give a conclusion to the inquest, where a decision is made and a punishment is given, whereas in the theatrical cut, they have the hearing, Ripley gets angry, and then everything is over, and it is down to the audience to be like, oh, well, I guess they're going to decide what to do with Ripley some other time. Giving this kind of finality to the inquest is good, but no new information is actually conveyed by this additional dialogue. The only thing this adds to the film, which was not already present, is that we learn that Ripley is not going to be treated as a criminal, which is, again, irrelevant to the plot of Aliens. These changes are fine, but as it is mostly repetition, I am going to place the inquest in C tier. In the theatrical cut, Ripley speaks with the chairman after the inquest and realizes that there are about 60 to 70 families on LV-426. They have been there for over 20 years, and they are there to terraform the planet and make the air breathable. We then cut to Ripley smoking in her room before Burke shows up with Gorman and informs her that they have lost contact with the colony on LV-426. This is quick. This is like really fucking quick. In between these two scenes, a lot of time has passed, and multiple things have happened. Burke contacted the colonists and told them to go and investigate the derelict ship, and we learn later in the special edition that it takes about 2 weeks to send a message to the colony. Enough time passes for Burke to be able to direct the colonists to the derelict, for the alien to be birthed, capture more colonists, and create more aliens, causing the colony to go dark. Additionally, Ripley has managed to get a job working in the cargo docks, and she has been trained to use power loaders up to a Class 2 rating. She has also had at least one of her monthly psychiatric evaluations, which means at a minimum we have jumped forwards by about a month, but I would consider it far more reasonable to be in the region of 6 months or so, and the theatrical cut simply does not give that impression at all. They are just like, yeah, there's a colony on that planet, also whoops, the colony's gone, I wonder what happened. In the special edition, we get 2 brand new scenes to fill this gap. On the surface of LV-426, we see the settlement, Hadley's Hope. Al, who appears to be in charge, is approached by one of his underlings, who tells him that one of the survey teams he sent out into the middle of nowhere wants to know if his claim will be honored if he finds anything. Al asks why wouldn't his claim be honored, and the guy replies,
Well, because you sent them out to that particular middle of nowhere on company orders, maybe? I don't know.
This is good dialogue that manages to avoid being, sir, as you know, you did this last week, purely for the benefit of the audience. We learn what happened through natural dialogue that is justified by characterization. The justification here is that Al is shown to be quickly irritated by people who make his job harder. He doesn't care about company politics, and he just wants to do what he is paid to do, and so him not considering whether there would be any problem with who owns the rights to what is entirely in character, giving a perfect justification for his underling to explain to him and the audience that Al sent these survey teams to these coordinates specifically on company orders. Al then starts to get pissed off and says,
"Some hunch in a cushy office on Earth says go look at a grid reference. We look. They don't say why, and I don't ask. I don't ask because it takes 2 weeks to get an answer out here, and the answer is always don't ask."
Again, this is direct information being communicated to the audience. This is exposition, and in a weaker film, this would be unjustified exposition from characters with no personality. This would instead be,
"Hello, Fred. Remember last week that you sent some survey teams to check out a grid reference?"
Hello, Matthew. Yes, I certainly do remember. What about it?
"Well, one of them just radioed me asking if he gets to keep whatever he finds."
Yes, he can keep it.
"Oh, okay, cool. What are they looking for again?"
Well, some corporate asshole asked me to check out a grid reference.
"Did this corporate asshole tell you what you should expect to find at this grid reference?"
No, Matthew. I never ask questions, unless the screenwriter allows me to.
Aliens justifies this through the characterization of Al, a character who appears for less than a minute. He is pissed off by people asking stupid questions. He doesn't have answers, and he has learned not to even bother asking, suggesting that he has been doing this job for a long time and is experienced in dealing with Weyland-Yutani higher-ups. He then gets pissed off that his staff aren't doing their jobs because they are allowing kids to run around where they shouldn't be, which is such an Al thing to do. This guy is such an asshole manager, leave me the fuck alone type. Now, regarding the actual information we receive, this scene makes it explicit that someone ordered the colonists to investigate the derelict. This was not just a freak accident. In both versions of the film, we get the reveal much later that Burke did indeed order the colonists to investigate the derelict, but until we get that reveal in the theatrical cut, the impression is that, oh no, what unfortunate luck, these colonists found the ship, and then the aliens started doing their thing. In the special edition, however, it is clear from the start that someone intentionally sent them there, and it is later revealed that this someone was Burke. Essentially, this means that this deleted scene from the special edition primarily serves as additional setup for the Burke reveal later. The primary detriment here is that it seriously risks cluing the audience in on Burke's involvement much earlier than would be ideal. The scene is also narratively unnecessary because we don't get anything in here that we don't get by skipping it, other than my darling Al. So this is really a case of, well, it was cool to see more of Hadley's hope, rather than being a scene that actually improves the film. However, the scene is vague enough as to not directly spoil anything later in the film. We learn that a survey team was sent to investigate something, and that this survey team might have found something. We can obviously guess what that something is, but this scene doesn't actually give us any concrete information, which means this is mostly okay at setting up future events. All of this is without considering the very next scene, however, which I find far harder to justify, but the deleted LV-426 scene is going to land itself in C tier. I don't dislike it, but it doesn't accomplish enough for me to place it any higher. This then leads directly into another brand new scene in which we see Newt and her family discovering the derelict ship. It turns out they are the salvage team that radioed the base in the previous scene. Newt is having an argument with her brother, and her mum tells them to cut it out. They then see the gigantic derelict ship, and Newt's dad decides to investigate before calling it in, so that they know what to call it in as. They head out, leaving the kids in the truck. Cut forwards by an unspecified amount of time, and Newt's mum returns in a panic and radios for help. Newt sees that her dad has been attacked by a facehugger, which will then lead to the alien infestation and the events of the film. In terms of narrative impact, this scene is like a less damaging version of the Paths of the Dead from The Return of the King, in that all it really does is ruin a future surprise. The big score is, however, far better with regard to tonal consistency than The Paths of the Dead. It also sets up the character of Newt by drawing attention to her and going, hey everyone, look over here, there's a little girl. I wonder if she will become important later, which means the audience is now expecting her to be found later in the film, which negatively affects the jump scare fake-out. We also know that they are investigating the derelict, which removes the suspense later in the film where the audience is wondering what happened to the colony. We now know exactly what happened. We know, when the Marines land on LV-426, that they are going to encounter a lot of aliens who have wiped out the colonists, and whilst it is cool to see how and why this was set in motion, for a first viewing experience, I absolutely consider this to be a detriment to the film.
But Random, obviously there's going to be aliens. You're watching a film called Aliens, you fucking idiot.
An astute observation, as always, retarded alter ego, but that doesn't mean the movie is well served by adding in a scene of, oh my god, look, it's the aliens, this is how they got here, and we're going to see them all later, oh my god. In the theatrical cut, we spend about 20 minutes with the Marines investigating the facility, and the suspense gradually ramps up as information is revealed. And the audience slowly realizes what has happened. They lost contact with the colony and want to investigate. It might just be a downed transmitter. Ripley arrives with the Marines. No signs of movement. Signs of a fight. Evidence of acidic blood, but no body. A failed last stand. Still no bodies. Facehuggers. This is when it becomes clear what has happened and that Ripley has indeed walked into a nightmare. A traumatized survivor, all of the colonists found under the cooling tower. A nest. How many?
Lots.
This is still very effective in the special edition, but it is undeniably weaker because the initial mystery as to what happened is non-existent. We already know that someone told Newt's dad to go and check the derelict and then he got face-hugged, and so it is quite obvious why they lost contact with the colony, which means whilst the characters may be uncovering a mystery, the audience is like, yeah, it was the aliens that you told me about this earlier, you showed me.
So this coming up is the biggest single change from the release version of the film. And the funny thing was, I'll never forget Gail Hurd, who was my wife and my producer at the time. We were confronted with this issue of how do we reduce the running time of the film by close to 20 minutes. And I just couldn't see it. I just could not see how it was possible to do a cut here and a cut there, a few seconds, bit of a scene, the tag of a scene maybe. He said, I've been thinking about this for a few days. And I said, all right, well, go ahead. He said, reel 3, which starts right here. You can take out reel 3. And of course, I immediately rejected that as completely absurd. And then I thought about it. And reel 3 begins here and it ends with Newt's scream when her father has the facehugger on his face. It works flawlessly. It's a brilliant cut. I think the biggest problem for me was that I couldn't imagine this film without the cognitive tether to the first film of the alien derelict. But it turns out that it works perfectly. A little dialogue bridge, and it works fine.
One part that I do like here is the brief reference to Newt playing in the air ducts, which shows up again later, as it is revealed that she made a little hideout in the air ducts, and this is how she managed to evade the aliens. However, this new scene is 3.5 minutes long, which is a pretty substantial amount of time to spend on something that simply doesn't need to be in the film. And although I like seeing Newt with her family, and although it is cool to see her dad go into the derelict while being like, no, don't do that, I've seen the first film, turn your ass around right now, mister, this is a scene that I believe makes the film worse. Both of these colonist scenes also feel out of place within the rest of the narrative, as they are the only scenes in the movie that are not from Ripley's point of view. Even in scenes where we watch the Marines doing things, this is always contextualized as Ripley watching. The big score is going to land in D tier. Both versions then show Ripley alone in her room having a smoke before Burke shows up like, hey Ripley, I might have done an oopsie. He explains that contact with the colony has been lost, and Burke wants Ripley to join himself and some Marines to investigate. He says that they don't know exactly what's going on down there, it might just be a downed transmitter, but if it's not, Burke wants Ripley to be there as an advisor. The special edition adds in a couple of extra lines of dialogue.
What's your interest in all this? Why are you going?
This is a reasonable question, and it allows for some minor world building and provides the audience with an explanation as to why Burke is going. However, it is not relevant to the scene in question, which is otherwise focused entirely upon Ripley's initial refusal to go back to LV-426. A good comparison here would be the first Hobbit movie, where Gandalf is like, "Come on, Bilbo, you should totally join us on an adventure," and Bilbo says, "No!" It would not have been appropriate for Bilbo to question Gandalf to find out why Gandalf is going, because although Gandalf's reasons for helping Thorin are something that the film absolutely could have made clearer, this would not be the time to do it. Similarly, Ripley asking Burke why he is going has nothing to do with her current predicament, and no answer Burke could theoretically give would change Ripley's mind. At this point in the story, Ripley has no reason to care why Burke is going beyond simple curiosity. Burke replies that the corporation co-financed the colony along with colonial administration.
We're getting into a lot of terraforming now and building better worlds.
Yeah, I saw the commercial.
Before we tie back in with the theatrical cut. This slogan, "Building Better Worlds," appears twice in the special edition, once here and once on a billboard in the colony, and this slogan is rather ironic given that Burke's actions, and the actions of Weyland-Yutani in the first film, could not in any way be described as building better worlds. Anyway, in the theatrical cut, it does not become clear exactly why Burke is there until he objects to them blowing up the entire site from orbit, due to it being a substantial investment from his employer. He is there to protect the financial interests of Weyland-Yutani. If I were to rewrite Aliens, I would consider putting this dialogue exchange in a subsequent scene, instead of the one where Ripley is first presented with her call to adventure. Minor character information like what we get from Burke in this scene is not a bad thing. The very specific issue I take with this is that it happens during a critical scene for Ripley where it doesn't quite belong. However, the dialogue itself is purposeful, and it only prolongs the scene by about 15 seconds, so Home Alone is going to land in C tier. Before we are introduced to the Marines, the special edition gives us a pair of lengthy establishing shots that last for just over a minute. A locker swings open, a booby mag visible inside. Pan over to a rack of weapons, followed by some missiles, leading into a wider view showing the dropship, a power loader, and many more missiles. Cut to a little gyro thingy in the mess hall, pan across to some more lockers, most of which are dented in some way, and eventually pan over to a load of hypersleep pods, which is where we join back in with the theatrical cut. I can totally see why you would remove this. I would in fact put money on this being the first thing James Cameron removed, because narratively it doesn't actually do anything. This is entirely environmental storytelling, and its value is that this is our first introduction to the Marines. Prior to this scene, we have been told that the Marines are packing state-of-the-art equipment, and that they are trained to deal with situations like this. These two slow panning shots also tell us, without a single word being spoken, or a single character being seen, that these are manly men. Even the women are manly, testosterone-fueled, powerful, unruly, violent, capable, well-armed, well-funded, and you do not want to fuck with them. This gives the impression that the Marines know what the fuck they are doing, which excellently builds anticipation both for the audience being introduced to the Marines for the first time, but also for the inevitable clash between the Marines and the aliens. The theatrical cut still accomplishes this, to a marginally lesser degree, because we see them loading the missiles into the dropship in a later scene. They have all this firepower and machismo, but something tells me it won't be enough. These changes also make clear that time has passed, as rather than cutting to the Sulaco followed by the Marines waking up, we see the cold, quiet, abandoned interior of the ship before everyone wakes up. I think there is great value in extra shots like this, but I can understand why it was removed, which means the extended Sulaco scene is going to land in B tier. As the Marines gear up and prepare to leave, the special edition gives us some additional dialogue from Hudson. I have seen the special edition so many times that I didn't actually realize that this dialogue was not in the original version of the film. Hudson stands up and says,
"Check it out. I am the ultimate badass. State of the badass art. You do not want to fuck with me.
Hicks looks away like, oh, for fuck's sake, he's doing this again, and tries to ignore him. Vasquez watches Hudson closely the entire time, clearly thinking this man is a fucking clown. Drake laughs and encourages Hudson to make a fool of himself, and we can hear other Marines laughing with him or perhaps at him in the background. Hudson fully embraces the bravado of being a heavily armed Marine, undergoing dangerous combat missions and conquering everything in his path, defeating enemies across the galaxy by aiming his gun at them and pulling the trigger. He believes he is a superhero. However, this scene is much more than just Hudson showing off, because it builds off of the relationship he has with the other Marines established in prior scenes. He is clearly more sensitive and less hardened than most of the others, but he covers this up by playing into the sarcastic clown role that he has found himself in. He is seen coughing after waking up, he complains about the floor being cold, and sarcastically asks Apone to get his slippers. He asks Vasquez if she has ever been mistaken for a man, and she replies,
No. Have you?
He treats Bishop as a pet dog and gets him to do party tricks for his own amusement, but this is then flipped back on him when Drake makes Bishop do the knife trick with Hudson's hand as well as his own. He interrupts Gorman immediately and asks if they are going on a bug hunt, jokes about Vasquez being an illegal alien, and sarcastically asks Gorman how he can get out of this chicken shit outfit. He also mocks Gorman's lack of experience when it is revealed that Gorman has only done one single combat drop prior to this one. Hudson is bullied by the other Marines and no one takes him seriously, so he has embraced the role of the sarcastic joker of the group. He constantly tries to impress people and to banter with the other Marines, but is shot down every time. If these Marines were not on the job and they were just having some drinks at the pub, it is very easy to imagine Hudson being the guy that they accidentally added to the group chat and whom they now have to tolerate. Because to Hudson, everything is a joke. He is a cocky asshole who wants to put on a show, and he almost always has a smart-ass grin plastered across his face.
Hey Ripley, don't worry. Me and my squad of ultimate badasses will protect you.
Ripley has been shown to be very uncomfortable being around the Marines, because their behavior is totally unlike anything she has had to deal with before. She has dealt with difficult people, such as Parker, but Parker was a cakewalk compared to these Marines. She is totally out of her comfort zone, she is not a soldier, she doesn't like these people and she doesn't want to know them. She wants to sit with Burke and Gorman and be ignored, not become a prop in Hudson's comedy routine. Hudson has noticed that Ripley is scared of going to LV-426, and so he decides to comfort her. With comfort being in huge fucking inverted commas, because he is using Ripley's fear to make himself feel better, to act like a clown, to put on a show, and potentially to put his own mind at ease. As when Ripley started speaking about her experience with the alien previously, Hudson listened intently, and this was the rare instance where Hudson actually kept his mouth shut, potentially indicating that he was also scared. Hudson goes on to list through some of the hardware they have brought with them.
Independently targeting particle beam phalanx. Probably half a city with this puppy. We got tactical smart missiles, phase plasma pulse rifles, RPGs, we got sonic electronic ball breakers. We got nukes, we got knives, sharp sticks.
Before Apone tells him to knock it off and they prepare to land. This further depicts the Marines as easily capable of handling whatever they may come across, which is an excellent way to build tension because it makes the audience wonder how whatever they find on LV-426 could possibly match all of this firepower. This scene is very funny because Hudson is dramatically overcompensating. It helps to establish Hudson's personality prior to everything going tits up later in the film, which makes his change in attitude around the halfway mark more effective. Seeing Hudson break down entirely,
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.
After having him like, we are the ultimate badasses, look at all our weapons, don't worry Ripley, we can handle anything, is certainly more powerful than in the theatrical cut. This scene isn't technically necessary in the way that the scene with Ripley learning about her daughter is, because Hudson's bravado and the military capability of the Marines is not anywhere near as important to the emotional core of the film. However, this is one of Hudson's best scenes, Hudson is one of the best characters in the film, and this only elevates both him and the film. The special editions version of Express Elevator to Hell is an easy A tier. As the Marines sweep the building, the special edition adds in a new sequence involving Vasquez and Hudson. The motion tracker picks something up, and both Vasquez and Gorman react to this immediately. No one speaks, as they are now operating with the information that something or someone is moving nearby. They find a half-open door with a bloody handprint, turn a corner, kick open another door, and find a couple of hamsters running around inside an enclosure. This excellently depicts Hudson and Vasquez working together. Both are competent, both trust each other, and both are able to function as a unit without either of their personalities getting in the way. However, the part of this that I am not in love with is that when they find the hamsters, Vasquez is like, "Good one, Hudson, you fucking idiot," when Hudson didn't actually do anything wrong. He read the motion tracker and treated it seriously, as would be appropriate. Which gives the impression that Vasquez is just being a bitch to Hudson because why not? Who cares if he actually did anything wrong? This scene serves multiple purposes. It establishes how the motion tracker works, the sound it makes, and how it reads movement. It establishes that the motion tracker is not 100% reliable, as it will detect anything that is moving, seemingly regardless of its size or speed. This gives the audience and the characters a reason to distrust them, which is our first indication that the Marines' equipment may not be up to the task. It also informs a scene with Hudson and Vasquez later in the film.
It's inside the complex.
You're just reading me.
They're inside the perimeter. They're in here.
Hudson may be right.
Because Vasquez has a reason to distrust Hudson's ability to use the motion tracker as well as the motion tracker's ability to detect anything useful, before then accepting that Hudson may be right. In terms of suspense, it gives us a false positive and a release of tension, which I personally think works slightly better than simply having the Marines wander around and not find anything. Finding the hamsters causes the audience and the Marines to let their guard down, leading to Apone concluding that whatever happened here, they appear to have missed it. The potential problem with this scene is the believability of these hamsters being alive. There are two ways this would be possible. The first is that Newt decided to feed and look after the hamsters, but for some reason didn't bring them back to her hideout. This doesn't really make any sense, and Newt doesn't appear to be in any fit state to look after some hamsters even if she wanted to. Alternatively, the colony only became fully abandoned a few days ago, because hamsters can apparently survive 3 to 4 days with no food or water. There is a bit of wiggle room here, because if a colonist managed to evade the aliens and was looking after the hamsters until recently, then it is possible that they dunked a load of food in with them so that they didn't need feeding as regularly, or potentially there were once more than 2 hamsters in this enclosure. This time frame sounds a bit unbelievable until we consider the colonist the Marines find moments before she is chest-bursted. The life cycle of the alien is not exactly something that is set in stone, as becomes excessively apparent in later films, but just taking the first 2 into account, we can speculate that it takes about 24 hours post-face-hugging for the alien to be birthed. This means that, in both cuts of Aliens, this colonist was captured by the aliens at most a couple of days prior to the Marines finding the nest, which means if she was looking after these hamsters, then it is perfectly within the realm of possibility that they would still be alive.
The complaint from the studio was that the film went on too long without anything really happening. I kind of was trying to just, wind the suspense tighter and tighter before you actually saw anything, before we paid it off. Consensus from the studio at the time was we were just kind of jerking around, not giving the audience anything. And I think that unfortunately too many movies that I see now, they just kind of all up front. You just start seeing stuff right away and there's no sense of a build.
Overall, this is a good scene, primarily with regard to the motion tracker, as well as Hudson and Vasquez's characterization. It is by no means a vital scene, as it is essentially a red herring, a build to a false climax before the plot then continues, which means it can be surgically removed without affecting the narrative. We get another fake out later when they detect movement and it is revealed to be Newt, which makes this scene feel slightly less necessary, but even so, I appreciate its content, so I am going to place Arrival in B tier. After determining that the area is secure, Gorman tells the Marines that he, Ripley, and Burke are going to enter the facility, and in the theatrical cut, we cut to Gorman, Ripley, and Burke entering the facility. The special edition adds a brief scene depicting the APC approaching the building. Hudson radios Gorman and tells him that they have fired up the computer, and Gorman tells him to stand by. Burke and Gorman head inside with no hesitation, but Ripley stops just shy of the door. She is about to cross the threshold and step into a building that she does not believe is secure. A building where, from her perspective, on a balance of probability, there are aliens present. Hicks notices that Ripley has stopped and asks her if she is okay. Ripley says yes, and then they enter the building. By skipping this uncertainty and just cutting to Ripley already inside the building, the theatrical cut works against the idea that Ripley was thoroughly traumatized by her experiences in the first film, that she is suffering from severe PTSD, and that she has returned to LV-426 to face her fear and put it behind her. It is in fact out of character for Ripley to just immediately walk inside, and so this edit in the theatrical cut feels like the film is skipping over something that should present a problem for Ripley. This is also the first direct interaction between Ripley and Hicks, which seems minor, but I think this is quite important because he is the first Marine who is actually nice to her. She was laughed at during the briefing, but here she is treated very respectfully by Hicks, which then informs their relationship throughout the rest of the film. When the shit hits the fan and Gorman buckles under pressure, Ripley grabs the headset and...
Hicks, whoever's left, get the hell out of here! God damn it!
In the theatrical cut, I guess Ripley directly addressed Hicks because she overheard his name earlier in the film, whereas in the special edition, Ripley addresses Hicks because she has already spoken with him on more than one occasion. This scene is excellent, but not critical, and its loss is felt in the theatrical cut. Memories is therefore going to land solidly in A tier. There is then a long stretch of film, over 30 minutes, in which there are no changes at all, which indicates that Cameron prioritized keeping this next sequence perfectly intact when he was required to cut out 15 minutes from the film. He decided to cut out various bits and pieces from elsewhere rather than cut up the pivotal scenes involving the approach to the alien nest and the carnage that results. So, to briefly cover what happens before the next extended change. They discover the facehuggers in MedLab, find Newt, discover the location of the missing colonists, head into the nest, everything goes horribly, horribly wrong, and the survivors find themselves stranded. All of this is identical in both versions. Hicks then runs them through the gear they were able to salvage from the wreckage. 4 pulse rifles with about 50 rounds each, 15 grenades, and a single half-full flamethrower. The special edition also introduces 4 robot sentry guns that are fully intact. A few minutes later, we get some further discussion as to how and where to deploy these sentry guns, and the theatrical cut contains some dialogue that is not in the special edition, because in the theatrical cut, the plan they are discussing does not involve the sentry guns. In both versions of the film, Ripley highlights the existence of a pressure door. In the theatrical cut, she says,
We could close that, weld it shut. That should hold him for a while.
Whilst in the special edition, she says,
Couldn't we put one of the remote sentry units in the tunnel and then seal that door?
In both versions, Hicks replies, yes, that will work, but we've got to figure on them getting into the complex. Ripley replies,
That's right, so we repair the barricades at these 2 intersections and weld plate steel over these ducts here and here and here.
In the theatrical cut, she concludes that should seal off MedLab and operations, before Hicks says,
Outstanding.
In the special edition, Ripley instead concludes,
That way they can only come at us from these 2 corridors.
Hicks replies, "Then we put the other sentries here and here," before saying,
Outstanding.
in the theatrical cut, their plan is to close all the doors and pray. Ripley's suggestion is to weld a door shut, repair 2 barricades, and seal 3 air ducts, the idea being that MedLab and operations are impregnable, and that they will be safe as long as they stay where they are. This is not a particularly good plan, but given that the sentry guns do not exist in the theatrical cut, this is about as good a plan as any. Hicks describing this plan as outstanding is a little strange because, again, this is not a good plan. This is seal the doors and hope it works. Conversely, in the special edition, in addition to sealing the doors and air ducts, they identify 2 corridors in which to place the sentry guns. This is obviously a much better plan due to the presence of the sentry guns, but they are not simply an I win button, because the plan is to seal the doors and vents so as to direct the aliens into the path of the sentry guns. But if the sentry guns fail...
Game over, man! It's game over!
In the theatrical cut, Hudson and Hicks seal the tunnels as per their plan. In the special edition, Hicks watches the cameras before setting up the control modules for the sentry guns. Hudson radios Hicks and tells him that sentry guns A and B are in place and ready to go. Hicks arms the guns, Vasquez tests them, and then Hudson seals the tunnel as he does in the theatrical cut. This is more logistics relating to the sentry guns, showing the audience how they work, where they are placed, and that they will fire at anything that moves. We also get a brief character moment from Hudson, who is immediately like, "Come on, let's get the fuck out of here," as soon as the sentry gun fires, figuring that the aliens might be drawn to sound. These changes to the barricade scene are almost entirely set up for a later deleted scene. It is not possible to have the later sentry gun sequence without these dialogue changes, which means the quality, importance, and effectiveness of this exposition cannot really be assessed without later context. So, despite this scene accomplishing everything it needed to do to set this up, I will wait until later before I place it on the tier list. Just before Ripley puts Newt to bed, we see the sentry guns in the corridor for 12 seconds, swiveling back and forth, armed and ready to fire. This shot doesn't really have anything to do with the scene between Ripley and Newt. It is more of an establishing shot that informs us that the defenses have been prepared, and that the characters believe they are safe, or at least as safe as they can be. In the special edition, just after Newt asks Ripley why parents will tell their kids that monsters are not real when they are in fact very real, Newt asks,
"Did one of those things go inside her?" "I don't know, Newt." "Isn't that how babies come? I mean, people babies, they go inside you."
No, it's very different.
"Did you ever have a baby?"
Yes, I did. I had a little girl.
"Where is she?"
She's gone.
"You mean dead?"
And we then rejoin the theatrical cut. These changes primarily serve the motherhood theme that is far better executed in the special edition. Newt inadvertently draws a parallel between the reproductive cycle of humans and the aliens, setting up the idea that a mother-type figure may well exist for the aliens. This is then picked up on in the very next scene, where Ripley questions Bishop as to where the eggs come from, which means rather than this simply being prompted by Ripley being like, I wonder where the eggs come from, her thought process is clear. Newt's innocent question, equating the aliens with human babies, clues Ripley in on the idea that there might be something laying the facehugger eggs. This, of course, leads into the discovery of the Queen, who serves as a twisted perversion of the maternal relationship Ripley has with Newt. This dialogue also allows Ripley to reflect on the death of her daughter, which helps to make this event feel like something that actually happened to the character, rather than being that thing that was mentioned that one time. It reminds the audience of the tragedy, and clearly positions Newt as Ripley's new daughter, whom she is tasked with protecting. The theatrical cut still does this, but without the context that Ripley already lost one daughter because of the alien, and so this is simply more effective in the special edition. James Cameron will have removed this dialogue after removing the earlier scene concerning Ripley's daughter, because without that scene there is no reason for her to discuss her daughter with Newt. This essentially means that all evidence of Ripley having had a daughter of her own was surgically removed from the theatrical cut. And if I had to pinpoint one single reason to watch the special edition instead, this would be it. This dialogue is directly tied to the core theme of the film, as well as the relationship between Ripley and Newt. I consider this dialogue to be as crucial as the earlier scene concerning Ripley's daughter, and so A Mother's Love is going to join it in S tier. After putting Newt to bed, Ripley and the others discuss the facehuggers and the potential prospect of a queen. Bishop seems to agree that something must be laying the eggs, but says that whatever it is must be something they haven't seen yet. In the theatrical cut, Ripley's question,
"So who's laying these eggs?"
remains unanswered. The only response is Bishop saying,
"I'm not sure."
And the audience is left to think about what this could mean as the conversation continues in another direction. The special edition, however, adds in some dialogue from Hudson, speculating about an alien queen.
Okay, maybe it's like an ant hive.
Bees, man. Bees have hives.
You know what I mean. There's like one female that runs the whole show.
Bishop agrees and refers to this female as a queen. Like in the theatrical cut, the special edition sets up the alien queen, but it does so in a far more direct manner. Instead of asking who's laying the eggs, followed by I don't know, which sets up the idea that there might be a special type of alien dedicated to baby making, the special edition continues with Hudson theorizing that the aliens may follow a similar breeding structure to various insects. He also explicitly says,
"She's badass, man. I mean big."
Which gives the audience an expectation for what will happen later, which affects the tension by amplifying the danger the characters are in. Not only are they expecting to be attacked by hordes of aliens, but there is also probably a much larger alien who has thus far remained unseen. We also get Vasquez calling Hudson an idiot for not knowing the difference between an ant and a bee, and for equating either one with the alien creatures they are fighting. Hudson is, of course, revealed to be very correct, despite being a bit of a punching bag and despite not being particularly intelligent. This is, in fact, the first useful thing Hudson has said in the entire movie. Everything else has either been sarcastic jokes, macho bravado, or highly emotional despair and doomsaying. The main question we need to ask here is, does the special edition benefit from being more explicit as to the nature of the Queen at this point in the film? On a purely narrative level, I would argue no, but on a thematic level, I would say yes, but only thanks to the parallel between Ripley and the Queen. In the theatrical cut, Ripley has found herself caring for a young girl and speculates that something might be laying the facehugger eggs. By this point in the film, the motherhood theme is present, but is nowhere near as well developed. In the special edition, Ripley has lost her daughter, has found herself caring for a young girl, has speculated that something might be laying the facehugger eggs, which then prompted a discussion about a potential badass female alien who runs the whole show. This additional dialogue from Hudson is a small piece of that puzzle, and I do consider it important. The downside, however, is that it essentially tells the audience what to expect from the alien queen later in the film, rather than the theatrical cut's open-ended suggestion that there might be something we haven't seen yet. I really quite like this dialogue, but I am going to be placing it in B tier. In the theatrical cut, after confronting Burke, Bishop tells the others that the cooling tower is going to explode in about 4 hours. The special edition slides in a little scene directly after Ripley speaks with Burke, a scene involving 4 brave little robotic sentry guns valiantly defending the heroes from the Xenos scum. An alarm sounds and Ripley runs back to the control room. Hicks tells the others that the aliens are coming, and the sentry guns begin firing.
A and B gun tracked and firing. Multiple targets.
Within just 10 seconds, these guns have fired 150 out of their 500 rounds, and both guns run dry in just over 30 seconds. They hear the aliens reaching the pressure door before Bishop radios Hicks, telling him,
I'm afraid I have some bad news.
Well, that's the switch.
This is where we tie back in with the theatrical cut, as Bishop has discovered that they are at serious risk of being exploded if they stick around. As this is only the first half of the sentry gun sequence, I will address the sentry gun part shortly. For now, I want to highlight that Bishop's revelation that they are on a time limit occurs in the middle of what is already a very intense sequence. rather than taking place during relative downtime. In the theatrical cut, they are stranded, they fully expect to be attacked by the aliens at some point, and Bishop is like, oh, by the way, we're going to explode soon. This is great, as it adds a ticking clock element to the rest of the film, which masterfully elevates the intensity of everything else. In the special edition, they are stranded, they are currently being attacked by a horde of aliens, and their first of 2 lines of defense has just been broken in barely 30 seconds. And then Bishop is like, oh, by the way, we are going to explode soon. The final hour or so of Aliens is a masterclass in how to gradually ramp up the tension to almost unbearable levels, as everything somehow manages to get worse and worse, whilst carefully avoiding anything feeling contrived or merely an excuse to artificially create the most maximum of maximum drama. Everything that happens here happens either for character-driven reasons or for logistical reasons relating to the rules of the setting. Rules that make sense and are strictly adhered to throughout. And like Alien, I would like to make a video on how Aliens dials its intensity up to 11 and does not let up, because this kind of filmmaking is not something that I think has ever been matched since. Please do let me know in the comments if you want to see that video, because it will help me gauge interest and work out what videos to prioritize. Anyway, this entire sequence where they work out the plan to send Bishop out to get the dropship from the Sulaco to come and pick them up, and that they have 4 hours in which to do this, takes place whilst the aliens are actively in the process of breaking into the facility, which somehow manages to instill the scene with even more tension than was present in the theatrical cut. But before I can assess the quality of the sentry gun sequence itself, we need to take a look at the second half. After Bishop leaves to get the second dropship, the theatrical cut continues with Hicks telling Hudson and Vasquez to form a perimeter before he teaches Ripley how to use the pulse rifle. But before we get to that in the special edition, we get the second sentry gun scene.
This is unbelievable.
20 meters in closing.
Now that the aliens are inside the facility, they can be seen on one of the cameras, although the flashing from the gunfire makes it impossible for Hicks to determine how many there are. The guns keep firing as the ammo count drops lower and lower. Both guns reach critical levels. One goes dry and Hicks grabs his own gun to prepare to fight, before Ripley realizes that the aliens are retreating. The final sentry gun stopped firing with a total of 10 rounds remaining.
Next time they walk right up and knock.
Yeah, but they don't know that.
Ripley figures that they have bought themselves some time, as the aliens will presumably now be looking for other ways to get inside. We get one more gem from Hudson and Vasquez.
Maybe we got them demoralized.
Before we tie back in with the theatrical cut, with Hicks ordering them to form a perimeter before he teaches Ripley how to use the pulse rifle. Okay, these sentry gun scenes are exceptional in execution. This is aided by the characters being unable to see what is actually happening. They can only watch helplessly as the ammo counters drop lower and lower, while listening to the constant rumbling of machine gun fire. This scene is desperation, urgency, and imminent danger all excellently packaged into what is essentially alternating shots of people looking at screens and guns firing at something off-screen. The reason this works so well is because of how perfectly James Cameron established the stakes. The guns prove effective, but even they are not enough. And the fact that the sheer volume of alien bodies is only referenced verbally, we do not ever see any aliens aside from a couple of split-second shots, forces the audience to imagine the sheer magnitude of this threat. The sentry guns do their job, but now they are spent. Ripley and the others do not have a plan B. They have lost their last line of defense, and so if, or when, the aliens find another way in, they will be well and truly fucked.
This is a scene that got the axe as a result of the studio's idea that we were wasting too much time, not really getting on with the story. I actually think this stuff really ups the ante and increases the fear a lot. I think when you want to take time out of a picture, you do a bit of everything. You trim shots, you take out a second here and a second there. At this time, obviously, we weren't cutting on the Avid yet, so we were, or, on any kind of nonlinear digital editing system. So there was less of a tendency to kind of nickel and dime little tiny cuts of 10 frames here and 10 frames there. You're cutting on a moviola, every cut had to be a splice that was opened up. So you tended to make lifts which were full scenes or partial scenes.
As fantastic as this sequence is, I need to do a bit of a deep dive on the logistics relating to the aliens and the sentry guns, because if this sequence doesn't make sense within the context of the rest of the film, then this, in and of itself, is grounds for its removal, regardless of how excellent the scenes are in their own right. Firstly, we need to consider how many aliens there are in the facility. We learned that there were 158 colonists in Hadley's Hope. Ripley stated that Burke was responsible for the deaths of 157, plus Newt, who survived, makes 158. We know that the colonists killed one of their own in the process of removing a facehugger. 2 live facehuggers implies 2 people died in such a manner, which makes 155 potential aliens. The alien that birthed as the Marines arrived was killed immediately, so that makes a possible total of 154. I don't think it is reasonable to suggest that all 154 remaining colonists will have been successfully captured alive and used to birth aliens, because this assumes that every single one survived long enough to be impregnated, when we can reasonably assume that at least some of the colonists would have died by accident, been killed instead of captured for whatever reason, or potentially ended their own lives. So I would highball the total number of aliens at maybe around 120. Of those 120, at least some will have been killed by the colonists during the initial outbreak that happened prior to the arrival of the Marines. We see some evidence of this, although we have no suggestion that the colonists were particularly well armed. Apone identifies signs of small arms fire and seismic survey charges that were used as explosives, but nothing beyond that. If we are generous and say that the colonists may have killed 10 to 20 aliens, this means by the time the Marines arrive, there are somewhere around 100 aliens inside the facility. In the theatrical cut, there are no mass killings of the aliens. The Marines encounter them in the nest, they kill a bunch of them when they break into the facility, and Ripley kills a few more when she returns to the nest to rescue Newt. This does not add up to anywhere near 100 aliens, which means there is a constant sense that there are a whole load more of these fuckers somewhere, which is a vital component of the film's oppressive, unrelenting intensity. In the special edition, however, we get the impression that the sentry guns are mowing down countless aliens for a somewhat extended period of time, and the simple fact is that if the sentry guns killed as many as is implied, then these 100 aliens can easily be reduced by 2/3, if not more, which could inadvertently give the impression that by the time Ripley enters the nest at the end of the film, there are no more aliens left. Just the Queen and the couple of stragglers that she kills on her way out. In the special edition, we know that they have killed a lot more aliens than they had in the theatrical cut, which can be viewed from a couple of perspectives. On the one hand, this explains how Ripley is able to get in, grab Newt, and leave without being swarmed immediately. On the other hand, it arguably makes this sequence less intense, because if anyone is keeping even an approximate count, they will know that there can't be very many aliens left. If the sentry guns did indeed kill a fuckload of aliens, as seems to be implied, then this lessens the idea that the humans are vastly outnumbered and trapped in an inescapable nightmare. So how can we possibly reconcile this? Well, this calls for maximum autism. The sentry guns each have 500 rounds, which makes 2,000 rounds in total. If they are 100% efficient, then this is, in theory, 2,000 dead aliens. Far more than the 100 or so that could possibly exist. So this means we have to lean on some mitigating factors. Firstly, how many bullets does it take to bring down an alien? We have no references for this in Alien, and surprisingly, we have very limited references for this in Aliens, because I can only count on-screen kills. 3 aliens are killed in the nest battle by smart guns fired by Vasquez and Drake. These are burst fire weapons, which means it appears that a 4-round burst from a smart gun will kill an alien. Ripley kills about 6 or 7 aliens with a pulse rifle, and in every instance, she fires multiple bursts, likely due to her lack of experience and accuracy with the gun. It is very hard for me to say for sure but it appears that one single well-placed 4-round burst will bring down an alien. But I can't confirm if a single perfectly placed headshot would kill one, as the only reference we have for that is Hicks with his shotgun, which is obviously not comparable. Vasquez and Gorman are shown to use their pistols, which are far less effective, which could be because they are pistols, or this could indicate that the armor plating on the aliens' heads is more heavily armored than the rest of them. Without drawing on external material, we don't know for certain what kinds of bullets any of these guns fire, with the exception of the pulse rifle.
10mm explosive tip caseless, standard light armor piercing round.
I think it is probably reasonable to assume that the ammunition for the pulse rifles, the smart guns, and the sentry guns are all very similar, which means the lethality for all three would be broadly comparable. This means if the sentry guns are as effective as the pulse rifles and smart guns, then 2,000 rounds fired in 4-round bursts will theoretically bring down 500 aliens. Still far too many. The second mitigating factor we can lean on is that the sentry guns are not anywhere near as accurate as the Marines, and this is not speculation. We know this from the film itself. The sentry guns will fire at anything that moves. They are not able to distinguish between something that is alive and something that is not, as is demonstrated when they test the sentry guns by using a barrel. When Vasquez throws the barrel, 2 sentry guns open fire for about 3 seconds, which, given their rate of fire, means they used a combined total of about 100 rounds to shoot a fucking barrel. These sentry guns are very cool, but they are not exactly what you would call efficient. This tells us that the sentry guns are going to continue firing at an alien after dealing a killing blow, as the alien is going to then fall to the ground, and we also have a nice handy reference for the aliens wriggling around a whole bunch after they get shot, which means although it may only take 4 bullets to kill one, these sentry guns are absolutely going to be firing more than 4 bullets into each alien by an order of magnitude, and that is discounting any potential armor that they may or may not have on their heads. Additionally, the guns run dry very quickly. They are only firing for about 30 seconds each. This is all happening in real time as depicted in the film, and this is not a montage. Hudson observes that the guns are draining ammo fast, so this is not a case of, well, maybe it took longer than what we see for them to run out of bullets. The fact that guns A and B fired off a combined total of 300 rounds in the opening 10 seconds of combat speaks to the inefficiency of the sentry guns rather than their killing power or the scale of the threat. This does not suggest that they killed 300 aliens in 10 seconds. This doesn't even suggest that they killed 30 aliens in 10 seconds. These things operate via the principle of throwing as many bullets downrange as possible, as quickly as possible, until the problem disappears. If there are 100 aliens in total, minus however many they killed off-screen in the nest, then for the aliens to still be a significant threat, it would be preferable if the sentry guns didn't nearly wipe them out. So, is it reasonable to suggest that the sentry guns killed maybe 30 of them? That would be 1 alien killed every 2 seconds, and the sentry guns dedicating about 60 rounds to each alien. That is almost twice as efficient as what we saw with the barrel, and so given the rate of fire, averaging around 16 rounds per second per gun, I think this is more than reasonable. And if I am close to accurate, then this would mean that there are probably anywhere up to around 60 to 80 aliens left alive following the sentry gun scene. We can also support this by what the scene tells us about the aliens' level of intelligence. The aliens are not just dumb animals. There are multiple references in the film to them being somewhat intelligent, but with regard to this scene specifically, they were smart enough to throw bodies at the sentry guns to test the defenses and to know when to stop. If the aliens were fucking retarded like the orcs in Rings of Power, then they will have just infinitely ungebungered themselves into the corridor until they ran out of bodies. This was evidently a calculated risk by the aliens, and once they determined that they would not be able to get past the sentry guns, they retreated to try and find another way in. Given that they are evidently intelligent enough to do this, it would not make any sense for 90% of them to just Canadian healthcare themselves into the sentry guns until there are like 10 of them left. Additionally, the aliens go on to cut the power and approach through the ceiling, which in the theatrical edition is like, oh okay, well I guess they are just smart enough to do both of those things for no particular reason, whilst in the special edition, they do this in direct response to the sentry guns. They had to find another way around. The fact that these sentry gun scenes appear to imply that far more aliens were killed than seems possible is a testament to James Cameron's skill in crafting sequences like this with a very limited budget. The highest number of aliens we ever see in a single shot is 6, which is this shot here, and yet the film essentially tricks the audience into thinking there were fucking hundreds of them. There are multiple lines of dialogue from Hicks and Hudson during the sentry gun sequence that add to the suggestion that the aliens are being absolutely battered.
Multiple targets.
Those ammo counters go. Man, it's a shooting gallery down there. They're wall to wall in there. This is unbelievable.
How many?
Can't tell. Lots.
Hicks and Hudson may well not have worked out how many total aliens there are, because they are less familiar with the creatures than we, the audience, are, which means it is quite reasonable to suggest that they are dramatically overestimating how many aliens are being killed. These two scenes with the sentry guns are the single instance of James Cameron removing footage that directly involves action and intensity. All other special edition only scenes are either logistical or character focused, and whilst many of those scenes do still affect the intensity of the film by better contextualizing what is happening, the sentry gun scenes are the intensity. The only reason it was even possible to remove these sequences is because the aliens are unsuccessful in breaking through and no character dies in the attack, which means, in the strictest possible terms, the sentry gun scenes are not necessary when telling the story of aliens. However, removing this scene would be like removing the Velociraptor kitchen scene from Jurassic Park, the police trying and failing to enter Nakatomi Plaza in Die Hard, Neo training with Morpheus in The Matrix, the asteroid chase from The Empire Strikes Back, the steel mill fight from Terminator 2, or the final sequence on the Narcissus from Alien. If our mission is to sacrifice art on the altar of cold hard cash, which is exactly what Fox wanted James Cameron to do, then we could remove all of those scenes just as easily as the sentry gun scene from Aliens. But all of these scenes accomplish so much for their respective movies that removing them fundamentally changes the experience. The kids are nearly eaten by dinosaurs and then they escape. No, this is a confrontation that has been built up to for the entire film. It depicts the intelligence of the Velociraptors and Lex and Tim's desperate fight for survival, in which they distract and outsmart the Raptors. The police try to get into Nakatomi Plaza but get blown up. No, this is a demonstration of how ruthless Hans Gruber is, how unprepared the LAPD is, the kind of firepower the antagonists have, how McClane does something rather reckless in an attempt to prevent further loss of life, and how Gruber considers this a personal challenge. Neo says that he knows Kung Fu, and then he demonstrates that he knows Kung Fu. No, this establishes concepts such as how the rules of the Matrix can be bent, it establishes how ridiculously good both characters are at fighting, it sets up the little hand gesture that will appear later, and it helps to make the audience, and Neo, forget the conventional limits of fighting in the real world. Han and Leia are nearly captured by the Empire and then they escape. No, this builds the relationship between Han and Leia whilst depicting Han as highly skilled and confident as he evades the TIE fighters. They kill the T-1000 but not really, and then they kill the T-1000 but properly this time. No, this establishes that the T-1000 is seemingly invincible, ratcheting up the intensity further following the initial chase scene. It depicts the T-800 selflessly confronting the T-1000 to protect John, the sadism of the T-1000, and the combined teamwork of Sarah and the T-800 to ultimately outsmart it and bring it down. Ripley escapes the alien but not really, and then she kills the alien but properly this time. No, this is Ripley being forced to directly confront the creature that has killed her entire crew. She cannot simply run away from it, she has to find a way to beat it head on. Whilst none of these scenes are, in the strictest technical narrative sense, necessary, They are all crucial scenes that serve as an escalation of a conflict. They are a step on the journey to a resolution of that conflict. And that is in addition to the spectacular cinematic moments within each scene. If I were a studio executive primarily concerned with churning out 2-hour movies to more efficiently pack cinemas with customers, with minimal interest in the quality of the art being produced, I would just as readily remove any of those scenes as the sentry gun scenes in Aliens. And the added bonus in the case of the sentry gun scenes is that they last for a total of 2.5 minutes. And if we add the earlier references to the sentry guns, they take up a total of 3 minutes and 15 seconds, which is shorter than the big score scene from earlier involving Newt's family. Barricade, the tunnel, and the corridor are all going in S tier. I cannot imagine watching Aliens without these scenes. Those of you familiar with Aliens will probably notice that we still have nearly an hour of the film to go, but there is only a single brief change still to come in the special edition. This is because, much like what happened earlier with the attack on the nest, James Cameron was adamant that he was not going to cut apart what can only be described as a masterful climax to a masterful film. So to speed run you through up to the next change, Burke releases the facehuggers into the room with Ripley and Newt. They are attacked by the aliens. Everyone dies except Ripley, Hicks, and Newt, who manage to escape to the dropship, but Newt is captured. Ripley then gears up to rescue her before the facility explodes. So, what part of all of this did Mr. Cameron elect to remove for the theatrical cut? Well, in the theatrical cut, Ripley tells Hicks not to let Bishop leave until she is back, and then she immediately leaves the dropship and enters the elevator. This is efficient narratively and also seems appropriate for the character given that she has a rather important deadline. In the special edition, just before leaving the dropship, Ripley says goodbye to Hicks.
See you, Hicks.
It's Dwayne.
Ellen.
Don't be gone long, Ellen.
This is a disappointing change. Yes, the focus of this scene is on Ripley's mission to rescue Newt, as Hicks is no longer an agent in the story, so you could argue that this dialogue is not necessary. This was probably James Cameron's rationale for removing it. However, by removing it, he also removed the climax of Ripley's relationship with Hicks. There have been multiple small moments that hint at a potential romance between them, and although this never goes beyond light flirting, there is still a progression of how open each character is with the other. Without this dialogue, it appears that Hicks and Ripley start to bond whilst in a highly stressful situation, and then in the theatrical cut they get to the dropship, and this isn't given any kind of conclusion or acknowledgement that these two characters have indeed bonded. Ripley realizes that if she does not make it back, then all of them are going to die, and exchanging first names as they say goodbye is a great little character moment. For the first time in the film, Hicks is useless. He is incapable of helping Ripley as he is now injured, which means he is no longer able to function as a soldier, the role he has filled since he met Ripley. His reveal that his name is Dwayne serves as an acknowledgement that now he is just Dwayne, an injured man sitting in a chair. And Ripley is truly on her own for the first time in the film. This is also Hicks's final scene, as he is sedated by Bishop after they return to the Sulaco, and frankly, removing this dialogue doesn't accomplish anything other than reducing the runtime by about 15 seconds. This serves as a final goodbye before the end of the film, after which they go on to live happy lives together away from the looming threat of Alien 3. The only criticism I can make here is that maybe Ripley doesn't have time to stop and say goodbye to Hicks, but I consider this far more excusable than the egg scene in Alien, because in Alien, Ripley has 5 minutes to escape, and she wastes about 2 minutes torching the nest. Whereas in Aliens, Ripley has 19 minutes to escape, and she wastes about 15 seconds saying goodbye to the man who has saved her life multiple times. This scene is clearly better in the special edition, it is worth the cost of 15 seconds, and so Ripley's promise is going in A tier. It is, frankly, a miracle that the theatrical cut of Aliens was as good as it was. The special edition, which is the film in its original uncut form, is a very tight movie, and so the prospect of trimming 15 minutes of fat from a film that basically doesn't have any will have been incredibly difficult. By some miracle, however, Cameron did accomplish this, and the theatrical cut of Aliens is one of the greatest films ever made. The special edition, however, isn't so much a side of fries to go with your gourmet cheeseburger, as is the case with most directors' cuts. In this instance, this is the same gourmet cheeseburger, but the chef hasn't been held at gunpoint and ordered to remove the cheese from the cheeseburger, which means you get to experience the cheeseburger in the way the chef originally intended. And not only is Aliens the best cheeseburger ever made, but it came after Alien, which was the best pizza ever made. Okay, I'm done with the food analogies. Can you tell I'm starting to get hungry? Anyway, the only example I can think of where both the first and second films are this incredibly good is Fellowship and The Two Towers, but that doesn't really count because The Lord of the Rings is really one film that was split into 3. The main areas of improvement in the special edition are Ripley's relationship with Newt, which is built upon Ripley having lost her own daughter as a result of the events of the first film, Ripley's relationship with Hicks, which includes a brand new first and last interaction between the two of them, generally elevated intensity and suspense, and minor character work for Hudson and Vasquez. Probably most importantly, however, the thematic through line of motherhood, relating this both to Ripley's own experiences and to the alien queen, is absolutely superior in the special edition. So if I were James Cameron, and I didn't have some asinine bellend from Fox peeking over my shoulder like the Chinese Communist Party, trying to moderate and restrict my artistic vision, I would remove the extended Inquest scene and get rid of both colonist scenes. The opening 15 minutes or so flow better without this new material, which varies between padding and actively damaging the initial mystery when the Marines arrive. Other than that, everything in the special edition stays as is. Aliens is one of the greatest movies of all time, and the special edition somehow manages to make it even better. The difference in quality between the special edition of Aliens and the director's cut of Alien is night and fucking day. Ridley Scott tried to modernize the film by prioritizing faster edits and trimming out longer tracking shots because he didn't trust a 2003 audience not to get bored, and the end result is a masterclass of horror that every now and then appears to have been edited by a 7-year-old with ADHD. Conversely, James Cameron recovered his original version of the film that was forcibly cut down so that the studio could make more money. And the end result is a masterclass of action and suspense that undeniably feels more complete. I can only recommend the special edition to everyone, regardless of whether it is your first or 10th viewing of Aliens. If you love the theatrical cut but have never seen the special edition, there is a strong likelihood that it will only deepen your love for the film. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you are enjoying these Alien videos. I am definitely considering just going through the entire series at this point, which will likely involve a theatrical cut versus assembly cut video for Alien 3. I have no fucking idea what I'm going to do with Alien Resurrection, and then probably Prometheus and Alien Covenant are not very good. I might do the AVP films if there is enough interest, and who knows, I may eventually get to Romulus. Also, for anyone who was unaware, there is going to be an Alien TV show titled Alien Earth, which will begin airing next month. I won't say that I intend to make one or more videos on it, but I will say that if the show is particularly good or bad, then expect at least one video on the topic relatively soon. Other than that, in the video description you will find links to my second channel where I upload video game streams, music, and some other oddball videos that do not belong on the main channel. You will also find links to the community Discord server and my Patreon. But with that, this is Random signing off, and I will see you in my next video.